Gran is a young boy who lives in a fantasy world filled with magic, knights, monsters, different races, and several powerful beings called primal beasts. They must board an airship with a crew of skyfarers to travel across these drifting territories, which are a collection of numerous floating islands collectively referred to as a skydom. One day, while he was little, he received a letter from his adventurer father, telling him about an island of stars where he was waiting for him. According to the letter, the island has different elemental dragons and magic users, terms that excite Gran, who hopes to one day be a skyfarer. From that time onward, Gran had always hoped to one day travel around the skydom in search of his father and the island of Astrals. Elsewhere on the ship, a knight battles a group of soldiers as she tries to protect a frail-looking girl whose name is Lyria. The knight's name is Catalina, and she's one of the few people who have gotten fed up with the Erst Empire's inhuman experiments, of which Lyria has been a constant victim. The chief mage intercepts them on their escape path using a dark crystal linked to Lyria's body to paralyze her. However, the crystal becomes destabilized, causing a massive explosion that sends Lyria flying off the ship. Down on his island, Gran helps his friend Aaron chop a lot of firewood, which they plan to use all through the month. They are joined by Vern, his talking baby lizard who believes he is a dragon, and Aaron's father, who thanks him for his assistance. They notice the Empire's battleship hovering over their island, and when a portion of it explodes, Gran notices the reflection from Lyria's crystal and decides to investigate. While he and Vir investigate in the forest, they follow the glow from the crystal until they find Lyria unconscious. When she wakes up, she is startled by the presence of two strangers in front of her, so they quickly take a step back and introduce themselves, offering to help her if she is in trouble. They inquire about her background, but all she remembers is being alone in a dark room until Catalina tried to help her escape. She asks if they have seen Catalina, and Gran, in an effort to make her feel better, promises to assist her in finding her after she has some rest in the village. Before they can leave, they are stopped by two heavily armed soldiers who demand that Lyria accompany them. Ryan draws his sword, and when the first soldier attacks, he strikes him down with surprising ease. He's surprisingly more skilled than he appears, and he can even cut down a fast-moving arrow before slaying the second soldier. Gran takes a breath of fresh air, thinking the battle is over, but one of the soldiers manages to activate a signal flare, alerting his comrades to their position. While they flee to safety, Lyria reveals that she is from the Erst Empire and that the soldiers who have surrounded them are a special force sent to retrieve her. Catalina also arrives on the scene, and she can use her magic sword to turn her enemies into liquid on contact, or she can freeze their feet solid to prevent them from moving. Gran is astounded by this feat because it is his first encounter with magic. Unfortunately, he does not have enough time to marvel because they must leave before more soldiers arrive. Catalina is relieved to see Lyria unharmed and explains that they can finally flee to safety by sneaking into her hidden airship at the other end of the island. She thanks the pair for saving Lyria and hopes they can continue to live peacefully on the island once they find their way out. Vern advises Gran not to get involved in the Empire's business, but he refuses to listen and instead resolves to see them through to safety, no matter how dangerous it becomes. They soon find a group of Empire soldiers interrogating a man and his daughter. The man tells them he hasn't seen Lyria, but they think he is lying. They reveal their plan to have the entire village assist them in their search, and they ask him to show them the way to the village, but he refuses, prompting them to threaten to kill his daughter. Catalina is enraged by their monstrous behavior, prompting her to approach and cut them down without hesitation, while Gran takes care of the soldiers holding the little girl hostage. Again, the man tells him not to get involved with the Empire, but Gran thinks everything's going to work out fine since he is doing the right thing. In other words, I'm the make, I can't die. Still in the forest, they come across Captain Pommern and his main forces, who have taken a special formation in order to summon a six-headed land dragon. It immediately attacks Gran, pushing him away from his companions and attempting to trap him with fire. Although he manages to avoid the flames, he is struck by its sharp talon, which breaks his sword and leaves a large hole in his chest. Gran's death has an impact on Lyria, who believes it is her fault, so she decides to transfer her powers to him. She reaches into his subconscious, and after a while, Gran raises to his feet looking completely different from his old self, a weak villager who threw away his life. Gran and Lyria use an incantation to summon a primal beast called Bahamut and an enormous and terrifying-looking dragon that materializes from the sky, shocking even Catalina, who's unaware that Lyria has such a trick up her sleeve. On Pommern orders, his dragon named Hydra attacks Bahamut with a non-stop barrage of his flame breath and even manages to land a hit on its face. This only enrages the massive dragon, who shoots a beam of pure energy, transforming the surroundings into magma. Pommern finally realizes he has no chance of victory, so he orders a retreat, leaving Lyria to absorb a portion of the dragon's primal energy back into her chest crystal, causing it to dematerialize. Gran awakens to find Lyria in his room, and while she hugs him and examines his body for any hidden injuries, Vern and Catalina enter and tell him to take it easy because the Empire's soldiers have already retreated. She explains that Gran died during the battle and was resurrected using Lyria's powers, which were developed by merging her with a primal crystal in a research project that was supposed to grant the Empire immense strength to invade other domains. Normally, only the Astrals have the ability to control primal beasts like Bahamut, but she developed this ability as a result of several Empire experiments. She explains that the origin of her powers doesn't just lie in the power of the primal crystal in her chest, but also in her descent, which she has no memory of. Lyria reveals that she shared her life force with him, and as a result, they must always be together or the bond will break and he will die again. Gran is shocked by this new information. The fact that he just resurrected from the dead takes a toll on him, and he takes a minute to accept his new fate and look forward positively. He claims that leaving with them isn't really a big deal for him, since he always wanted to venture into the outside world on a journey to search for his father. Catalina tells him that they'll have to investigate the island of Astrals to find clues about Lyria's past, and when he hears her talk about the Astrals, it becomes a clear sign that fate brought them together. That evening, they join the villagers who are having a celebratory feast after surviving the wrath of the Empire and primal beasts on the same day. Everyone in the village is extremely welcoming, and they even invite Catalina and Lyria, who are complete strangers, to feast with them. They apologize for causing them so much trouble and inform them about their plan to leave the following day along with Gran. Everyone in the village is well aware of Gran's dream of becoming a skyfarer to search for his father, so they easily accept his decision. Well, everyone except Aaron, who thinks he is making a reckless decision by putting himself in danger. But deep down, he just doesn't want his best friend to leave the village, so Gran puts his mind at ease by promising to return to the village after completing his quest. The next day, Gran prepares his things, and together with Vern, they head out to join the others on the small airship. They bid the villagers farewell, and after taking off, Catalina turns out to be a novice pilot. They almost crash into a mountain before she can figure out the control and lift them over the calm and beautiful clouds. After flying for a while, they crash into an isolated island thanks to Catalina's amateurish piloting. Although they come out in one piece, the ship is wrecked beyond repair. Luckily, a passerby who happens to love ships witnessed their crash landing, and he is extremely furious that a novice pilot like Catalina ruined such a good airship. Before he leaves, he tells Catalina to learn how to properly pilot an airship before she even dreams of purchasing a new one on the next island. They decide to go to Port Breeze, a nearby island where skyfarers restock their supplies and a city well known for its bustling commercial activities. Catalina further explains that it is a perfect location because the town isn't affiliated with the Empire, so they don't have to worry too much about being ratted out or chased by a bunch of soldiers. While shopping for supplies in a shop, a fancy journal with a heart-shaped design catches Lyria's attention. Catalina purchases it for her to document her most treasured experiences during their journey. In town, they take notice of a giant statue, which a man tells them is supposed to be a representation of Tiamat, the deity that protects their island from bad weather, although the townsfolk have forgotten about her now that they can forecast the weather on their own. The next day, they arrive late to the port and are bummed to find out that all the passenger flights have been booked. While Catalina tries to negotiate with the person in charge, Gran and Lyria drift off to admire a massive airship at the loading dock. They encounter the man with the ship complex, and he soon starts lecturing them about the knowledge and difficulties required to properly pilot an airship. Since he has so much info about airships, they assume he is a skyfarer, which makes him tell them that he was once a pilot but doesn't fly airships anymore due to personal circumstances. He introduces himself as Rackham and takes them to his workshop where he has already started fixing their wrecked airship. He promises to finish the repairs but would only give it back to them when they get a proper pilot that can fly it. While they converse, two people with horns and furry ears approach them. The overly eccentric and carefree man introduces himself as Drang, while the short girl who keeps him in check is Sturm. They casually offer to give them an airship so they can leave the town immediately, and Lyria is excited about the offer. Rackham tells them not to fall for such an obvious lie, but Drang tries to convince them further by revealing he knows that Catalina is an Empire fugitive. They tell them to take the airship and leave the island, or they'll have to make them cooperate by force. They prepare their weapons to attack, and in the heat of the moment, Rackham uses the fumes from the wrecked airship to create a smokescreen, allowing Gran and Lyria to escape into town. They are chased down an alley where they can easily avoid confronting their pursuers by using the maze-like paths and sharp corners to their advantage. However, after a while, Lyria runs out of breath, leaving Gran to play the hero and volunteer to buy enough time for her to escape while he stays behind to fight. Drang uses a magical orb to send a fireball attack that he parries with his sword. Seeing that he is at a disadvantage, he tries closing the distance between them, but a third party intervenes by obstructing their path with some rubble. Rackham uses the opportunity to sneak them into a secret underground passage where they pass through until they arrive at the surface where Catalina has been searching for them. Rackham informs them that he doesn't want unnecessary trouble with the Empire. He quickly part ways with them to save his skin, leaving them stranded yet again with no way off the island. Since they couldn't book a flight to leave town, they start brainstorming about the best course of action to take now that the Empire's agents are searching for them all over time. Just then, Ciro, the store owner, happened to overhear their conversation and reveals she might have a solution that can help them salvage their situation. Lyria is impressed that a kid like her can manage a big shop all alone, but Catalina quickly apologizes for Lyria's rudeness. It turns out Ciro is actually an adult, and she is from a race called Harvins, people who look like children, no matter how old they get. She offers to sell them a used airship for an affordable price, but this doesn't solve their problem because they'll just wreck it again, as none of them are professional pilots. Some men who have been eavesdropping on their conversation tell them to approach Rackham, who is considered the best pilot in the town. They also tell them not to get their hopes up because he'll probably refuse to help them out since he stopped flying a long time ago to focus on repairing a seriously damaged ship that might never fly no matter how much money he spends on it. They decide it's worth a try, and together they head to the hill at the end of the town expecting to see the wrecked ship Rackham has been working on. However, they are shocked to find a beautiful and massive ship that looks like it's already been completely repaired. At the top of the hill, they notice a troop of Empire soldiers led by a shorty called General Furias. This guy is completely ruthless and can casually talk about wiping the island off the map like it's. When his subordinate begs him to reconsider his decision, he stabs him for doubting his judgment. He hears a sound coming from a nearby building, and without hesitation, he orders a mage to destroy it along with whoever is hiding inside it. The group has no choice but to come out of hiding to avoid the explosion. He recognizes Catalina and Lyria, so he orders his troops to capture them and kill their other companions. He concludes that they plan to escape in Rackham's ship and laughs at their desperate attempt to escape on a ship that hasn't taken to the sky in years. He also mocks them for being oblivious to the fact that they are trapped in the island for good and nothing they try can stop what he has planned. He tells them he was the one who booked all the airships leaving the island because he wants everyone to be present when he annihilates the island along with its citizens. While making light of the atrocity he intends to commit, the support under his chair is shot at, making him roll down the hill while Rackham distracts the soldiers and leads Gran's group down another underground passageway he uses to get to the site of where his ship is kept. He shows them the way to his safe house, and once inside, he starts panicking because he only discovered the shorty was a general of the Empire after he shot him. They beg him to help them pilot their ship, but he refuses. He explains that he doesn't want to fly any other airship other than Gran Cipher, the wrecked ship that he apparently already fixed once and flew in the sky before it crashed again and refused to fly even after fixing her up. He tells them he has no intention to fly any other airship until Gran Cipher responds to him and doesn't care how long it'll take for that to happen. Although he offers to teach Gran how to care for and pilot airships, they decide to give priority to informing the townsfolk about the Empire's plan to destroy their island and them with it. While they head to the town, Catalina tells them about a powerful weapon the Empire had been developing and how it is capable of destroying an entire island. She thinks it must be what General Furias wants to use to destroy the island. She tells them not to make light of his words because the Empire is ruthless. They soon encounter Drang and Sturm, who once again offer them an airship to escape the island before it is destroyed. He calmly begs them to leave, but Catalina refuses their offer and pleads. They try the violent approach and ready their weapons to attack. He starts by sending a fireball at Rackham, whose armor can withstand the attack. He also blocks his shots with another magic orb, and soon, the battle becomes a 2 versus 1 situation with Gran in the mix. He blocks Gran's sword with a repelling orb and blasts him with an electric blast he has been waiting for a perfect time to use. Before they can continue the battle, a huge tornado wreaks havoc on the nearby forest, uprooting the trees and tossing the logs everywhere, ultimately making the location unsafe to continue fighting. Again, he gives them one last chance to get off the island with his spare airship, and when they reject his offer for the 3rd time, he wishes them good luck and runs to safety, far away from General Furias' mysterious plans. The weather continues to worsen, blowing off roofs and buildings and making the town's folks seek shelter in the temple. The tornado continues to intensify, eating away bits of the temple little by little, leading Rackham to suggest that they at least try to get the children to safety in an empty airship. He asks if there are any pilots in the hall, but no one responds because it's flying in such a bizarre weather is obviously a suicide mission. He decides to help fly the ship, and together with Gran and some volunteers, they head to prepare the ship for takeoff. On getting to the dork, they can only watch as it is destroyed by the General Furias, who already anticipated the move. Assured of his overwhelming victory, General Furious uses the opportunity to reveal the cause of the disaster-class weather to be her goddess, Tiamat, whose real identity is the wind primal beast, and all he had to do was enrage it, and that was pretty easy since the people stopped praying and offering sacrifices to it for so long. Lyria offers to stop Tiamat with her powers, but Catalina opposes the idea as it is too risky to go out, let alone fly over to the part of the island where she resides. She has, however, made up her mind, and to support her, Rackham takes them to the Gran cipher, a plan the general wouldn't anticipate. Although they follow him on board the ship, they keep asking him why he thinks the ship would start up all of a sudden. He tells them he just has a feeling in his gut, and he believes the only reason the ship didn't fly all these years was because it was waiting for this day when it will be needed the most. Surprisingly, the ship starts in one try, and they can easily take to the sky despite the terrible weather, above the clouds in the direction where Tiamat is raging from. While he steers it, he is overwhelmed with joy as he has finally gotten the ship to fly after so many years of waiting patiently and against all odds. He seems to be enjoying himself while the others are scared for their safety because he isn't the kind of smooth driver they expected. When they arrive at Tiamat's location, she quickly senses their presence and starts blasting their ship with some energy beams from the numerous dragon heads attached to her back, so that they are preoccupied and have no chance to get close to her main body. Thanks to Rackham's excellent flying skill, they can evade most of the blasts one after the other. She intensifies her attacks with more blasts than they can possibly evade, making him fly higher into the sky to enable him to gather enough momentum before descending and using the velocity of their free falling to increase their acceleration to the max until they arrive face to face with an enraged Tiamat. She is finally in sight, and although Lyria tries to communicate with her, she doesn't respond and continues to attack them each time, with more effort than the previous round. Lyria observes that Tiamat is being influenced by a negative crystal, so she tells Rackham to take them directly above her. When they get there, she lends Gran a part of Bahamut's power, giving him a heightened physical ability that lets him jump from the ship onto a floating rock as he evades most of her continuous blasts. She eventually hits him at point-blank range, but thanks to Bahamut's power, he doesn't die. He dashes at her at full speed and breaks the crystal embedded in her chest. While he falls to his death, Tiamat regains her self-awareness. She catches him midair and delivers him to the airship where his companions are. Rackham finally becomes a believer after seeing Tiamat up close and promises to always be grateful to her for giving them good weather to fly their airships. Before she disappears, she leaves Lyria with a present and part of her primal energy. Back at the island, Rackham makes the people understand that they have to pay homage to the goddess from now on and appreciate her for always giving them good weather. Later, Catalina finds Gran behind a building where he is silently enduring the pain from the injuries he sustained during the battle with Tiamat. She heals him with her magic powers and makes him promise never to take reckless actions without first consulting her. Back at the shop, when they both touch the gift from Tiamat, it shows them visions of places they've never been, making them puzzled by what it must mean. Luckily, Sierra recognizes the artifact as a sky map, one of the legacies of the Astrals, and there exist other pieces which are necessary to cross over to the island of the Astrals. When they describe their vision to her, she tells them that the only location that matches their description perfectly and has a volcano is the island of primal. Outside, Gran meets up with Rackham, who is ascertaining the damage his ship sustained. He asks him to become their pilot once again, and when he asks where he'll want to go if he is ever granted the chance, he tells him he'll love to go to the island of Astrals. He shows him the letter from his father, and even after reading it, he doesn't really believe it's more than a fairy tale. However, he is impressed by Gran's resolve, and this convinces him to join them on their fairy tale quest. On the day of their departure, Catalina makes sure he isn't accompanying them on impulse and even reveals that they are fugitives of the Empire who would be constantly pursued by forces greater than he has ever seen. He responds by explaining that he was only in the town because the Gran cipher wouldn't start, and now that it can fly again, he has no lingering attachment to the island. Before they take off, Ciro asks them to consider taking a request from one of her clients who need help locating a missing person. She begs them to at least meet up with the client, and there they can decide if they'll take the job or not. Since the client also lives in the location they saw in the vision from the sky map, they take off and head for the island of Primal, where the person is waiting for them. After a while, they arrive at the island of Primal, where there's an active volcano, a lot of dry mountains, and a misty environment due to the steel mines around deep in the mountains. When they dork, Rackham introduces Gran to the officials as their captain and makes him take care of their clearance at the checkpoint. While they observe the amazing scenery the island's volcano offers, they encounter Ciro, who they are sure they left behind at Port Breeze. She tells them she has the ability to be everywhere at the same time and offers them a job where they'll have to meet in secret to discuss the details. Before she leaves, she tells them to be extra cautious while in public and try not to trigger the natives who are always nervous around strangers. In town, they find so many quality goods displayed around. However, there is hardly anyone in town, and the few people they find quickly go indoors when they see them. Later that day, they head to a bar where Ciro introduces them to a client, a tall man who doesn't give his name since he is part of a secret government organization. He begs them to help him the way they assisted with the situation with Tiamat. He reveals their Archduke called Saka the Great has been missing, and he wants them to help find him. They don't understand why they'll be tasked with an important mission like finding the leader of a city. Suki explains further, informing them that the matter is very delicate as the Empire might be involved and openly taking action would surely provoke their wrath. Although it's clearly a dangerous mission, they leave the final decision to their captain Gran, who decides to accept the mission. The next day, they headed to town to obtain as much information as possible from the townsfolk who have no idea that their leader is missing. They learn that the Archduke often came to town and played with the kids. Sometimes he also showed them magic tricks, but one day he suddenly stopped showing up. Over at Gran's End, they learn that there have been rumors of the Archduke teaming up with the Empire to make a powerful weapon, and that it all started because he started ordering more steel and ore than usual. The shop owners firmly believe their Archduke is a saint who would never abandon them. They assume he might have been kidnapped by the Empire, as that is the only logical explanation for his sudden absence. In the evening, the group rendezvoused at the town square to analyze all the information they were able to gather during the course of the day. They observe that everyone has a different story about the Archduke's whereabouts, so they decide to continue the investigation until they find something more concrete than rumors. The next day, they head to the outskirts of town to check out the last place the Archduke was spotted. While walking around the abandoned workshop, Catalina notices someone following them. Lyria freaks out on hearing this, but they inform her they've always been observing the stalker since the previous day and can't do anything because they are hiding their presence with magic. They make her calm down by reassuring her of their protection, and suddenly, they hear the screams of a child from afar and head to the location where they find a girl being assaulted by some goblins. They quickly drive away the goblins and save the girl before they rob her of her magic equipment. They wonder why they were being tailed by a child, but she protests on hearing them refer to her as a child. She calls herself a fully fledged mage whose name is Lo, a magic apprentice of the missing Archduke. She takes them somewhere else, where she talks about how her master is not only a powerful mage and a great inventor who is usually carefree, but also a great leader. However, he started acting strange when visitors from the Empire came, and one day he just up and vanished from the city without telling anyone. They thank her for the information and promise to help her find her master, but it turns out she has decided to tag along with them, and no matter how hard Rackham tries to discourage her, she just doesn't budge. Together, they manage to narrow down their search to an old stone quarry, where they might find a clue to his whereabouts. They arrive at the quarry, a place that looks isolated and deserted, but on a closer look, Lo senses the Archduke's magic and reveals a hidden passage that leads underground. They become optimistic as they head down into a vast advanced laboratory filled with huge machines. They don't find the Archduke, but they are welcomed by the weird duo, who tell them that the laboratory belonged to the Astrals and deep within it lies a primal beast. Of course, they don't buy their lies, so Drang tries to convince them, revealing that they only accompany their employer and have absolutely no hostile intentions towards them. Just then, a heavily armored individual shows up from within the shadows. Catalina recognizes her as the supreme advisor to the Erst Empire and one of the 7 luminary knights who are known for their brutal nature. Just standing in the presence of the Black Knight makes Catalina scared shitless. However, Lo is ignorant enough to accuse her of kidnapping the Archduke. On the other hand, the Black Knight informs them that they are also searching for the Archduke, who ran away with the results of the research the Empire funded for him. Before leaving, she reveals that the project the Archduke was researching involved fusing primal crystals with machines, and for it to work, he needs Lyria, who, like the doll she carries around, has a vital primal crystal. After they leave, the group is attacked by a mechanized knight made by the Archduke. Lo tries to reach him through the night, but she barely survives being crushed by it thanks to Gran's intervention. Lo continues to cling to the absurdity that the Archduke can hear her through the night, so they force her to come with them while they barely manage to escape into a smaller passageway. While they search for an exit, Lyria tells them that she's being drawn to a faint primal energy beneath the lab. She leads them down an almost endless stairway until they stumble on an entirely different section of the facility into a place that looks like a remnant of an ancient civilization. Here, they find a giant armor, and while observing it, the Archduke reveals himself from above, telling them to leave the premises in an angry tune. He doesn't recognize Lo and behaves super aggressively. He only talks about awakening his Iron Giant, which he names Colossus. When he sees Lyria, he tells her to awaken the Iron Giant by giving it some fraction of the mass primal energy she has stored in her primal crystal. Meanwhile, the Black Knight has been observing the situation from above. He orders his doll, who looks like an emotionless version of Lyria, to activate the Iron Giant. The giant comes to life, and when they notice he plans to attack them, they prepare to engage it. However, a swing of its sword makes them realize they have to be extra cautious if they don't want to become mincemeat for the rodents to feast on. Catalina attacks it by conjuring several ice swords, while Rackham shoots it multiple times with his rifle. All these attacks combined don't make a dent in its impenetrable armor. Lyria quickly lends Gran a portion of her powers, which he uses to attack its head-on. He manages to dent it a little before he is sent flying by the huge sword. Lo tries to hold back the iron giant severely with her magic, and when it continues to approach them, Lyria gives her a boost, whose effect creates a blast that manages to knock it off its feet. She also uses the energy she absorbed from Tiamat to give everyone a magical boost that allows them to actually deal more effective blows against the giant. On seeing this, the Archduke orders Colossus to also use one of its tricks, so it summons magma from deep within the ground to attack them. Lyria and Lo counter the magma attack with a spear of icicles that overpowers the giant and shuts down its function. Lo smacks the shit out of the Archduke and makes the evil energy influencing disappear completely. He comes back to his senses and apologizes to Lo for making her worry. Unfortunately, their touching reunion is interrupted when the facility starts crumbling down. They manage to escape unscathed, and while he lies unconscious in his mansion, Lo narrates how she was an orphan who the Archduke saved from abandonment, and that is the reason the Archduke is dear to her. Lyria is touched by her story and becomes teary. Although she doesn't remember having a home or caring parents, she knows what'll mean to lose Catalina, the one person who has always been by her side. Lo shows her a magic trick that cheers her up, and the Duke also regains consciousness. He reveals that he was given something called the Source of Power by a strange individual, and although he always wanted to build something that would help him protect his people, his mind became blurry and he couldn't control what he did during his research. When he asks what happened to the Iron Giant, Lyria tells him it died protecting him and Lo from the rubble and entrusted a fragment of the sky map to her. She offers it to him, but he tells her to keep it, suggesting that there's a reason it was entrusted to her in the first place. Afterward, Lo thanks them for saving the Archduke and asks where they'll be heading next. They place their hands on the new sky map and are shown a vision of a blue island with a giant puddle. Catalina recognizes the place to be August Isles, and so they decide that will be the next destination of their adventure. The next day, the Archduke makes an appearance in town to ease the people's worry. While he goes to see Gran and his companions off, Lo arrives with a backpack and informs them of her intention to accompany them on their journey across the skydom. The Archduke also asks them to take her along, and they all agree since she is easy to get along with, and also a merge who can be useful in battle. Before heading for August, they make a quick stop on an island where Ciro plans to open a branch of her establishment. Since they helped her transport her stuff from Primal Island, she promises to help them procure supplies for their journey at a discounted price. This would take 3 days, so instead of waiting around and idly wasting away their time, she gives them a quest that entails exploring a newly discovered dungeon in the woods. She gives them a map and compass, and they immediately head into the uninhabited part of the island, finding their way across the forest, dangerous mountains, and bridges until they arrive at the entrance of the dungeon. Rackham and Lo put on a carefree attitude, but Catalina warns them to be more cautious as an unexplored dungeon is usually very dangerous. Lyria is suddenly trapped on the floor, and one after the other each of them finds themselves stuck until the floor crumbles, and they all fall into an underground pit. They slide down different tubes that separate them into 2 groups. Gran, Rackham, and Lo are on one side, while Lyria, Vern, and Catalina are at the other end. Although they are separated, Lyria and Gran can locate each other because they share the same life force. While he tries to sense her presence, his group encounter a water trap, which they only survive thanks to Lo's spell. On the other end, Catalina handles the heavy lifting, saving Lyria from multiple traps until they arrive at a safe space where they catch their breath. On the other end, Lo is having difficulty lighting up their path because light magic isn't her strong suit. She can't even sustain a glow for 5 seconds, but luckily, Rackham came along with a flare, which they used to find their way through the dark passage. Suddenly, the ground begins trembling due to a fierce battle between 2 adventurers and a sand golem that is blocking their path to the treasure room. One of the girls is almost smacked to bits, but Gran blocks the golem's fist with his sword. When it is shot with a rifle, it simply regenerates, and even when hit with a grenade, it simply comes out completely healed and more angry than usual. Gran engages in a close-quarter battle for a while, and after observing its attack pattern, he explains a plan that can take down the golem to the group. While they try to distract it, Lo creates a water ball of its head, and they all shoot at it, causing the ball to explode and create a mist which allows them to attack it in his blind spots. The pink-haired adventurer tosses a bomb at its mouth and misses just by a hair, so Gran grabs it midair and dunks the bomb into the golem's mouth, causing it to explode from inside out. Lyria's team arrives at the site of the explosion only to find out it was caused by Gran and a group of adventurers. Together, they head into the treasure room filled with lots of gold, treasures, and artifacts, one of which attracts Gran's attention. When he draws out the sword, the dungeon disappears and all the treasures, excluding the sword, turn into sand. When they report this to Ciero, she explains she can't pay them if there's no proof of the dungeon ever existing. She tells them to keep the sword as payment, but Gran hands it to the female adventurers who are still bummed that their treasure turned to sand. They politely decline his offering and thank him for saving their lives, which is much more important than any treasure the dungeon had to offer. In a dream, Lyria finds herself in a room filled with so much blood, the corpse of all her companions, and a girl sitting in the center of it. When she looks closely, the girl turns out to be her. Gran wakes her up from the terrible dream, and she's glad it's just a dream and everyone on board is alright. They head outside where they experience the scenery of August, the only sky island surrounded by the ocean in the entire skydom continent. They can only stare in amazement at the sea as it's the first time Lyria and Lo and Gran have ever seen the ocean. When they land in a tourist town, the place is deserted and Lyria can sense a faint presence of a primal beast. She asks Gran to also try to observe its energy, but all he senses is a weird smell that leads them to a bunch of slime-looking residues that have been washed offshore. They encounter a man who Rackham recognizes as Eugene, a former acquaintance from Port Breeze who teases him about finally fulfilling his childhood dream of getting the Gran Cipher to fly. The man thinks he brought his family for a sightseeing trip. He thinks Catalina is his wife, while the other three are his adorable children. They immediately protest and explain that they are a simple crew of skyfarers and their captain is Gran. He offers to take them to the capital with his boat, and while they cross the seas, he tells them about the ongoing war between August and the Erst Empire, which started when the Empire refused to stop polluting their water with residues from their experiments. Catalina thinks they must be pretty bold to wage war against the ruthless Empire, but he tells them he is confident that they can drive away the Empire's forces with the help of their guardian deity, Leviathan, who protects their seas. He urges them to pray to Leviathan for good fortune, so Vern asks if it can protect them outside the skydom, where they eventually leave in search of the island of Astrals. They soon arrive at Miseria, a beautiful and lively city which is the capital of August Isles. The city is well protected and has high-rise buildings, the likes of which they've never seen before. He notes that the reason everyone is in high spirits is because their army is valiantly holding off the Empire's forces at the front lines far away from the city. When they arrive at his place, an injured man who was a victim of a monster attack is brought in. Lo heals him, and afterward, Eugen explains that there have been numerous monster attacks and the civilians continue to put themselves in harm's way despite lacking proper training. While Lo decides to help out in the infirmary, Catalina is asked to help train their troops. Rackham is also asked to help tune their ships, and lastly, Gran and Lyria are asked to go around town and get some items. Later that day, the Empire's battleships are spotted above the town. While Gran is distracted by the commotion brought about by an imminent attack, Lyria is kidnapped and subdued using a primal crystal. Gran gives them a chase across town, but his desperate efforts are to no avail when they pass through a one-way tunnel and lose him. Meanwhile, the battleships have started blasting the city with bombs, the buildings are being destroyed, the soldiers severely punish anyone who tries to stand up to their oppression, and even when Lyria begs them to stop, Palmer makes her cooperate by telling her the people are only suffering because she defied the Empire. He tells her to stop dreaming about enjoying life like normal humans because she is nothing but a tool left behind by the Astrals to destroy what's left of civilization. To prove his point, he uses a crystal to jog a memory from her past, one where she murdered her fellow test subjects and came out as the ultimate tool. This breaks her completely, and she recalls the dream she had where she watched herself kill every single one of her companions. He almost succeeds in breaking her will, but seeing Gran fight his way to rescue her gives her a little hope to hold on to. The commotion causes Leviathan to rise from the seas and lay waste to the Empire's battleships one after the other. While Gran fights back the soldiers, he is shot in the shoulder, however. He still manages to knock Palmer into the sea by kicking him in the face. By this time, Lyria has lost her senses and is subconsciously making Leviathan go berserk. Graham understands this and wants to find a way to subdue the primal beast, but his companions suggest they escape chaos with Lyria, who is still acting strange. The beast causes a typhoon that engulfs the lower parts of the city in water, causing them to almost drown before a mysterious lady saves them using her vines to drag them out of the water and into a balcony. The destruction caused by the Empire and Leviathan caused more damage than anyone could dream of, and as a result, the infirmary is packed full of the injured while Lyria continues to lie unconscious. The gang all gather in Lyria's room, trying everything they can to wake her up, but to no avail. The strange lady who tagged along with them introduces herself as Rosetta and explains that Leviathan is enraged because of the pollution in the seas, and its condition has nothing to do with Lyria, who has intentionally shut her mind off. This condition cannot be cured by medicine or magic, and the only way to wake her up is a drastic measure that might end up endangering Gran's life. Rackham is suspicious of the lady who suddenly appeared and has been giving them advice like she is part of the team. He thinks she might be working for the Black Knight, but Gran takes her side as he is secretly aware that she has saved them twice already, the first time at Port Breeze and a while ago when they were drowning. She leaves the room, giving them time to weigh their options and decide if she is trustworthy enough to place Lyria's life in her hands. While they complete, someone coax bearing bad news and reports that the sea has begun acting up yet again. Rackham and Eugen quickly head out to investigate the situation while Gran informs Catalina about a statement he heard Pommern say. Something about Lyria destroying everything in the city as she did before. Catalina then explains how the Empire once experimented on some wild beasts and a dark essence on an isolated island. The moment they incorporated Lyria into the experiment, she made the beast die, summoning a monstrosity that disintegrated the entire island from their remains. After locking her up in isolation again, she was put in charge of her well-being. And then she discovered she was like any other child and decided to help her experience a normal life in the outside world. She thanks Gran for showing Lyria what it means to be normal. She then offers to watch over her while he gets some rest ahead of the next day that'll surely be eventful. Outside, he meets Vern, who gives him a solid prep talk that helps him strengthen his resolve to save Lyria. He meets up with Rosetta, who explains that the drastic measure involves asking a primal beast for help, but it's a risky move because the beast is unpredictable, and the process might kill him also. They finally agree to Rosetta's plan, and immediately they start making preparations to depart for their destination, which is a lush jungle in a place called Lubacy Archipelago. It only takes them a few hours before arriving at the island filled with nothing but thick forests, bountiful vegetation, and clear ponds. Rosetta leads them down an underground path that opens into a calm space where a massive tree that beautifully bathes in the glow of the sun. Rosetta calls forth the primal spirit called Yggdrasil. The stunning deity who rules over the forest, she shrinks into the size of a regular human and hugs Rosetta, who informs them that their relationship is akin to that of siblings. When they all bow their heads and humbly beg her to save Lyria, she agrees and leads them to her hallowed ground where she prepares to send Gran's consciousness into her mind. Although Yggdrasil promises to guide him on the journey as far as she can, she tells him that the success of the procedure depends largely on the strength of his will. Immediately, she casts the soul-searching spell on both of them. He finds himself in a room filled with books, water, and some pillars of ice blocking the path to the bookshelves. In the center of the ice pillars, he finds Lyria, who continues to read her journal and barely pays attention to him. He tries to reach her with his genuine feelings, but she responds by telling him about the memories she sealed behind the pillars of ice and how she recently remembered that her sole purpose is to bring misfortune to everyone she comes across. She blames herself for the misfortune they had to go through during their time together and reveals she plans to die in isolation and save them from a life where she'll continue to bring them suffering. She breaks down in tears, blaming herself for making Catalina, who was once a revered knight of the Empire, become a fugitive and making him die and leave the peaceful life led back at home. She tries to force him out of her subconscious with a strong current, and in the process, the hairpin he brought along him falls down. He tells her how everyone helped to fix it after Pommern destroyed it at the harbor. He makes her realize everyone truly cares about her and none of them has ever considered her a bringer of misfortune. On the contrary, she always saves them with her ability to control primal energy. Immediately, the scenery changes from a flooded room into a clear sky glowing bright with rainbows. The moment they wake up, they only have a brief moment to celebrate her recovery before their joy is cut short by the arrival of the Empire's battleship. They quickly intercept Pommern and his troops before he orders his mages to ravage the forest with fire. As usual, he tells Lyria about her past and how no good will come off her mingling with regular humans. However, this time she isn't alone, and her friend's words become a shield that keeps her mind off his buttload of accusations. Soon they are surrounded by soldiers from the Empire as well as some wild beasts under the influence of Pommern's dark primal crystal. When they attack, Rosetta restrains the beasts with her vines while the others support Gran as he defeats all the soldiers and finally destroys the primal crystal under Pommern's control. He tries to play a fast one with a hidden pistol, but Tiamat responds to Lyria's call and blows him along with his remaining subordinates into a lake of far distance from their location. Back in town, the group walks into a heated battle between the people of Miseria and an enraged Leviathan, who is using a horde of monsters to destroy the town. Using the Iron Giant, Lyria saves Eugene's life. She informs him about Leviathan's condition, how he had been using his energy to keep the seas clean despite the pollution, and has finally run out of primal magic that can only be regained by feeding off humans. She informs him that they can help ease the beast's pain, but he'll have to buy them time to get close to him. He quickly rallies the few fighters still able to hold a blade and instructs them to defeat as many small fries as they can. While they find their way to Leviathan, they are surrounded by lots of sea monsters who want to block their path. Luckily, the two adventurers from the dungeon help them out of the bind by defeating the monsters with a bomb. By this time, several skilled fighters show up at various locations in town, helping them take out as many monsters as possible. While Gran and his party head to Leviathan's location, more eccentric adventurers who have unique combat abilities clear the way for them by defeating the monsters who are trying to protect their master. The monsters suddenly take up a strange and more coordinated formation, as if they are being controlled by an external force. They push the adventurers back, causing them to take cover against the more forceful and aggressive monsters who almost crush Graham's crew before a mysterious girl appears out of nowhere and repels them with a powerful technique. She introduces herself as the captain of the Holy Knights from the neighboring island, and her companion, who is a powerful spear user, also makes a dramatic entrance from the sky by killing a ton of monsters with a magically enhanced technique. Yujin uses the opportunity created by her last attack to kill the commander monster, giving the others orders, causing them to disperse randomly as before. Lyria quickly lends some primal energy from Yggdrasil and uses it to create a path for Gran to run toward Leviathan. He is able to dodge its close-range blasts and strikes the crystal popping out of its chest on his first attempt. However, there's a fail-safe mechanism that causes the crystal to exude a volatile gas that also affects Lyria due to her connection with Gran. They both give their all, exerting every ounce of their strength and managing to destroy the huge crystal, making the beast regain its senses once again. As usual, Leviathan gives Lyria a part of its primal powers along with a fragment of the sky map. Immediately, she observes the energy from Leviathan. The Black Knight, who has been observing the battle, orders his doll to take a part of the power for herself. That evening, everyone in town celebrates their victory over the Empire. The adventurers begin to leave one after the other, while Yujin shows up drunk and asks them to let him join their crew. He explains that he has a feeling he'll run into someone he has been searching for if he tags along with Gran, who always finds himself in sticky situations. They happily welcome him as a part of their crew, knowing fully well his capabilities and how it would benefit them to have more manpower while traveling around opposing the Empire at every turn. The next day, there's a fireworks display and lots of cheering as the people of Miseria bid farewell to the heroes who saved their town. The group takes to the sky and continues their journey around the skydom, hoping to find the remaining fragments of the sky map.